Okay. So we have Kalina is our only online student today because Charlie is out today. so Kalina just awkwardly faced that direction like all of you guys did. And it worked. It did the trick. Okay, so Elias, you have an assigned spot. I know, it just makes life easier. Also, it means I know where you guys sit every day and I don't have to try to like find you in the room, because let me just tell you, that is not a fun experience. Okay, so let's see. So everyone's going to need their computers in a couple minutes. I'm going to play a video first, and Kalina, this might take me a second to figure out how to do this for you and here. I may just send you the link. It might make life easier. So you're not like hearing weird feedback and it coming through twice and having to watch it on there. It's not worth it. So give me 2 seconds. So Kalina, I'm gonna send you the link right now. And then you'll see when we start playing it and you can just turn off your sound. Just disconnect our sound. Do you know how to do that? Okay, so where the little microphone is at the bottom where it says mute, there's a little like up arrow, and you're gonna go up to leave computer audio. So when you play the video, that's gonna be your best bet. Otherwise, it's gonna sound real weird. Let's see. Okay, where is what I'm looking for and how do I do this? Yes. Yes. Okay.
Wait, is it plugged in this time?
So you guys, the only major changes with all of you being here in person are really just not being on your phone because it's rude. And just being aware of like me trying to get your attention because I'm not the loudest teacher in the universe. And just being respectful. So phones in backpacks, please. You don't need them for the rest of the class period. You're welcome to use them at our break, but other than that, no thank you. There's the AirPlay. 9. So weird to see so many of you in the classroom at once. I don't really know what to make of it. Okay. Does this work? Okay. Hopefully the sound does what I expect it to do and it like doesn't do something weird. So you guys are going to start to learn about color this week. I feel like I need to stand now that everyone's actually here. It feels weird to sit and talk to you at the same time. So we are going to start painting tomorrow. So what that means is if you have an apron at home, a lab coat, a big button-down shirt, a big t-shirt, parent's shirt that they don't care if it gets ruined, it will 100% ruin your clothes. Like literally no question, it will ruin your clothes. The thing about acrylic paint is it's plasticized, so it has plastic in it. So it'll literally just dry on your clothes and never come off, ever. Like I have a pair of pants that I flung paint on purpose, and it's acrylic, hasn't come out in 4 years. 4 years. So it will stain your clothing. So you don't want to wear your favorite shoes this week. You don't want to wear your favorite clothes this week. You want to make sure you bring a grubby shirt to cover up with. You'll leave it in your cubby box. You won't have to worry about making sure to do it later. So what I need you all to do right now is take out your phone, whatever way you remember to do this. If it's text mom, text dad, text myself, leave a note to myself, set an alarm when I get home. Whatever it is you need to do it right now. If you brought your shirt, you can go ahead and put it in your cubby right now. It will get destroyed, so you want to make sure it's not something you care about at all. Or you're just going to make a cool paint shirt. I don't know. It's up to you, however you want to do it. So I'm gonna give you guys a second to do whatever it is that you need to do to make sure you have that. It will be a big deal. You will be super bummed and it'll wreck your stuff. So make sure you do that.
So do I just like text my mom saying that
Just whatever it is. If you need to text her and be like, don't let me forget tonight, I need to remember to bring a big sweatshirt, big t-shirt, big whatever is going to cover you. I have a lab coat. I like wearing my lab coats. Actually, I have two. And I have aprons as well. So I have a few extras, but we're talking like 3. So don't expect to be able to use them. Okay, so we're going to get all kinds of sciencey today. We're going to get into art and color and science, and it's going to be kind of all over the map. But I'm very excited for you guys to learn this. I actually only just kind of recently started to understand this. So I think it's extra exciting that you guys get to learn this at a younger age than I did. And hopefully it makes sense. So we're going to watch a video, and then I'm going to break it down for you. So know that if you watch this video and you're like, what the crap are they talking about? I promise I will explain it. Just sort of try to take in as much of it as you can, okay? Lavinia, can you see okay? Or are you getting blocked by me? I will move. Okay, I can rotate myself. Ugh. This dang cord wasn't in the way. Okay, so cross your fingers, this plays correctly. And then Kalina, you're good. I'm gonna mute you so you don't have to listen to us. Actually, you know what? You should be fine. Yeah, because I'm gonna mute you, so you're good. Just mute yourself and I'll mute you on my end, and then you can play the video, okay? All right, Kalina, can you hear me? Okay, sweet. Perfect. So you guys are, oh, I have to remember to do a thing. Okay, publish. Yes. Okay, so you're going to open up your computers and yes, that should be fine. Yeah. Y'all, what are you doing? Okay, use your phone. Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna go to quiz.com. Yeah, it's quizzes, but it says join my quiz.com. It's quizzes, but it looks like you can just go to joinmyquiz.com. That's weird. Does it say, is it saying like, what's that little blue button say?
Well, it says reload.
That's weird.
And it's just, it says the same thing every time.
Which Wi-Fi are you on?
LBUSD.
That's weird. You could try going to LBUSD guest, or you can do it on your phone. It's just harder to see on your phone. Okay, try your phone if it's not working for you. Okay, joinmyquiz.com. It looks like it says. So try joinmyquiz.com.
I'm on LBUSD guest and I got in, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm on. I don't know. My parents found out how to like lock different sites.
Yeah, you can enter the code in. Joinmyquiz.com. It might work on your computer, Ollie, if you didn't have it typed in correctly.
No, I did.
Okay.
It's just, it does that for everything.
Weird. You got in? Okay. 923030. Oh, that's
It's the same thing as the join code. My phone is dead.
This phone that I'm holding in my hand right now, I'm having to do this like right now.
Zoe, I'm gonna need to email your folks and tell them they need to change whatever restrictions they have on there because you have the same problem with other things.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I can't do anything.
yeah, it doesn't work.
I tried adding to the playlist
And the heck, it's so weird.
No, it's my parents. They said, they did. Why is there yeah, but there's like restrictions on what you can see. It's usually way illusion. Oh, is that just
I know. If it's not letting you join with the code, it's because you put a space in between, which is dumb because that's how it shows it, but apparently that doesn't work. Who knows?
Same thing with Google.
I feel like,
No!
yeah.
No! I didn't mean to do that. I accidentally entered it, like made me put in a random thing by accident.
It's true. Watch it happen.
Thank you. Okay, that's thank you.
Okay, so we're still, let's see, we're missing only one person today, so there should be 17 of you. So somebody else is still not logged in. I don't know who you are.
There's only 14 people. Oh wait, now there's 15.
So there's Lavinia, did yours work? Oh, there you are. Inara, Elias, Izzy. We got Izzy,
No!
Ella, Elias.
I meant, I
Yeah,
was trying to put it back on and I accidentally left the top. Why?
that doesn't make any sense.
Wouldn't understand it. What's the code again? 92300.
I thought I had 18. Do I not have? Oh, I have 17. That's why. I thought I had 18 students. Sorry, you guys. That's my fault, not yours.
Don't hit start, please.
Okay. Here you go. Just don't click any of the buttons.
Just hit the phone number two.
Okay. I want this to go full screen. There we go. Okay, so you just watched a video that explains how our eyes perceive color. And I know that that's pretty intensive, right? It's very scientific. It's taken me a long time to understand how this works, but this video is actually the first time I felt like I understood what that all meant. Headphone out. Thank you. So headphones out, I'm talking. There's no reason for you to be listening to music right now. Just have a headphone in.
Yeah, I guess so. Here you go.
Take them out, please. That's weird and unnecessary. Okay, so theoretically, no, do we not do this quizzes? So the question is, what even is color? So color is different waves of light that you take in through your eyes, and then your brain processes it as color. So your eyes are not processing it as color. Your brain is getting sent a signal from the back of your retina that says this is what it is. So it's actually happening in the back. Get it together. Either that or I move you both away from each other. I was nice. I put people near friends. I don't have to do that. Can you put it on airplane mode or something? Do something so you're not getting messages. And then Zoe, you can close your computer because you're not using it anyways. Yes.
Does that technically mean our eyes only see in black and white?
It means your eye, like the front part of our eye, doesn't really perceive color at all. It's actually the back part of our eye that sort of sees the color, and then that sends a signal to our brain that says, this is that color. So people who are colorblind have different things going on with their rods and cones, and they can't perceive certain colors. Yeah.
But how do we see like every single color?
Because we don't actually see every single color. There are colors we can't see. We can't see ultraviolet, and dogs can see ultraviolet, and different animals can see ultraviolet, but dogs can't perceive the difference between red and green. They're colorblind in that way. Ultraviolet is essentially, it's a light wave that has fewer nanometers than we can perceive with our eyes. So we can only perceive colors that are between 400 and 700 nanometers. If it's above that or below that, we can't perceive it. The waves of light are either too small or too large for us to be able to see.
Does that mean if you're blind that it's something wrong with your code, or if there's something wrong with your brain?
It's, if you're blind, I think there's other stuff going on, because your cones are what perceive light, your rods are what perceive dark and light. I think there's like a whole other thing going on there. I don't know actually, but I will find out. There's probably something else going on, would be my guess.
Like if you lose an eye, you're still blind.
Right. I actually have a friend who doesn't have one of her eyes, and she wears an eye patch all the time. She got cancer in one of her eyes, and so they actually had to remove it, and she wears an eye patch all the time, and that's just her norm. So to me, this is really cool. This is very exciting. I'm someone who loves science and I love art, so the places where it intersects, I think, is super interesting, because there's so much. I've had friends who are science people and they're like, no, there's nothing similar about art and science. I'm like, wanna bet? Like half of art is science. That's literally how we figured out pigmentation. That's how we understand light. It's how we understand perspective. Like half of art is actually math and science. If you're making glazes, that takes very specific formulation to get the glaze to come out the shininess that you want it or the matteness. There's so many different components. What I do in ceramics, there's a ton of math and science behind that. The way that the kiln works, the temperature it goes to, all of that stuff, that's science. That's not art necessarily. So it's very interesting stuff. So first thing, we're looking at something. I'm looking at all of you, you're looking at me. When that color from everything I'm perceiving right now hits my eye, bounces off you guys, hits my eye, the first place it goes is the cornea. So that's the very front of our eye. You have obviously the actual like iris and things like that. We have the clear bit in front of our eye. The cornea is right behind that. Theoretically, are we gonna work? No? I'm pulling a cam right now. This is how he shoots like half of his things. He like holds his mouse like this. Okay, there we go. Stop making noises. Why? Okay, so it first hits at the cornea. The cornea bends the light that's coming into your eye towards the pupil. So the pupil is obviously the dark circle in the center of our eye. You may have noticed this. When you're in dim light, your pupil gets really big because it's trying to take in all the light it possibly can. When you're in really bright light, your pupil gets really small because it doesn't need to take in as much light. So the same thing with a camera. If you're familiar with cameras, the ISO setting determines how big the shutter is. So if I'm shooting outside, my ISO can be like a 400, that's pretty low, because I don't need to take in extra light. If I go into a theater and I'm trying to take photos in there, I need it to be up really high and open really big so it can take in as much light as it possibly can. So sometimes you guys may have taken photos in darker light and the photo comes back grainy and you see like the little dots, like if you try to enlarge it, it's all dotty. That's because your camera can't compensate for how dark it is. It can't take in enough light. So the newer iPhones boast this dark mode shooting context. It's not actually compensating. They built it into the software to lighten things. It's not that kind of camera. It doesn't work that way. So fun fact, kind of cheating, but it works. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're waiting on 2 people who are not listening. Okay, do it. Go to the next thing now? I don't know what to do. Whoa.
Oh, I'm
Okay, so the cornea, yes, that is correct. Why is this not giving me, oh, okay. So once the cornea bends the light towards the pupil determines how much light gets in. So the larger the pupil is, the more light's coming in. The smaller the pupil is, the less light comes in. So if you're in a dark room, your eyes get really big, your pupils get really big because you're trying to get as much light into your eyes so you can see. So if you were literally like, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to pee, you get up, and if you looked in the mirror at that time, if it was just enough light that you could see in the mirror, your pupils would be giant because they're trying to take in as much light and there's not very much. So you're having to compensate. Your eyes are having to compensate for that. I like this intensive music. It's making me happy. Sounds very high tech. Okay, so we know that the smaller your pupil is, the less light it takes in. Think of it as a basic, like if you had a window open and you have the curtain open just a little bit, it's letting in just a little bit of light. But if you open the curtain all the way, it's letting in a bunch of light. Same kind of concept. It's just in your eyeball, which is kind of crazy that our eyeball can do that when you think about it. So once the light goes through the pupil, it goes through the lens, which is directly behind it. And then that angles the light back to the back of our eye, which is the retina. So the retina is kind of curved like this. That light comes directly back and it takes all this different light and it angles it in like this so that it directly hits where your rods and cones are. Woo, what did I do? Clicked on the wrong thing. So the retina, back part of our eye, contains the rods and cones. And where the lens directs it to is exactly where the rods and cones are. That area also contains ganglion cells. So ganglion cells are nerve cells that can communicate with our brain so that our eye, that's kind of the pathway, right? That allows us to communicate what we see to our brains. Yeah.
Can I ask, how do we deter reflection then? Like, how do we look in a mirror and know it's not just like another image?
I don't know. I guess because we're seeing ourselves. That's a good question. You know what? I have a friend who's an optometrist.
So smooth that it like reflects.
That does make sense.
No, yours is just the color.
This is like changing my whole.
Oh my god.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask my friend who's an optometrist. I'm gonna text her when we're on break and ask her. Because that's a really good question. Because yes, okay, I can see myself doing this in a mirror. But if I try to move my eyes back and forth, I can't see that. I can't see my eyes moving. They're doing it. It's not physically possible unless you're capable of holding one eye still and moving the other. You can't, that doesn't work, right?
I can do that.
That's impressive. I definitely can't do that. I can barely even cross my eyes. I actually find it very challenging for some reason. Yeah.
You can move them a tiny bit when looking at one eye.
Bounces off the mirror and back into our eye.
Makes sense.
But isn't that how we see pictures as well? If we look at the picture, that's how we
Is everything a mirror? Everything is a mirror.
Oh no. We're entering Black Mirror zone.
Oh no.
I don't know how many of you guys have watched that. I couldn't get through the whole thing. It was too weird for me. I do have a random fact. In Black Mirror, there's one episode called San Jacinto, and I watched it and freaked myself out completely because one of the characters, there's an image of her sitting on a beach and it's like slightly, taken from like here, looks directly like me. It's so creepy. Like it looks like my hair, my posturing, the whole deal. I first literally was watching it and I was like, whoa, what? Like that wasn't me.
It's like a mirror.
It was literally, I had a Black Mirror experience while watching Black Mirror. It's terrifying.
In this one game, it like scans to your software to see if you're like recording or not, and it's like, and one of the characters would be like, "Hi."
Creepy.
Yeah, I know that game.
Yeah,
It lets you know.
in Doki Doki Literature.
Oh, I don't like that idea. That freaks me out.
Momentary.
Okay, so just to review, light goes through the pupil, passes through the lens, it directs it back, it forms it into like a triangle and points that back at the retina. In the retina, that particular little area, they showed it as a little red space behind. That has rods and cones and our ganglion cells. I'm not trying to write. So let's see how many of you remember this from the video. I did not repeat this.
Wait,
Solid, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so,
It says I'm in second. It says I'm in first.
oh wait,
No,
I will wait until you're done talking. Okay, so your rods are helping you perceive dark and light. No, we're not doing this?
It's sweet and sour.
Obvi, duh.
Duh.
We all have to have our Billie Eilish moment and say duh. Okay, so rods and cones, dark and light, right? Rods, dark and light. Cones, color. See, color. Rods, dark and light, right? Dark and light, rods, cones, color.
And what's the lines? Why are lines?
They're not. It was just me coming up with some other answer. Okay, so once your rods and cones assess the color and darkness or lightness, the ganglion cells that are also in that retina send that information to the optic nerve. Then the optic nerve sends that information to a part of our brain called the primary visual cortex. And it's actually back here at the back of our skull is where that part of our brain is. So there are 3 different types of cones, and each type of cone is sensitive to a different range of light. So remember how we saw different ranges of light where it was like the lines were close together and then it got further spaced apart? Those farther spaced apart, it's actually the amount of space between the peaks of the wave that is being measured in nanometers. And have I ever thought about nanometers in my life? No, never. We have more cones that are sensitive to red light, which means our vision is better at seeing warm colors. We perceive warm colors more easily. Yeah.
Does that mean that we're more drawn to, that's why marketing sees red more?
I think red as a marketing ad, a reason that, my brain's not saying words right now. The reason why marketing uses red the most is it's eye-catching.
Yeah.
It's literally, it's bright, it contrasts well against almost any other color, it tends to pop out. So it may be because our eyes perceive red more easily, for sure. But I think it's also just that it's a standout type of color. Yeah.
Wait, so our eyes get like super big and you see it in red?
They don't change in pupil dilation. It's literally just that our brain and our eyes are better at perceiving that particular wavelength. So those wavelengths are slightly wider in appearance versus like a super tight one. And they're a little easier for our eyes to perceive.
Can I ask a question on like cats then? Like when cats, even if it's not dark or light, if they see something they're curious about, their eyes will get
I have
really big.
no
And that's what
idea.
it has to do with
I
the lightness.
It makes no sense. I was thinking that earlier today too, when I was thinking about this project, and I'm very curious about that too. It's like if they get excited by anything, their pupils just go like shoo, like huge. It's very strange.
Two things. One, the cats people has to do with like their interest in something to see better. Like if they see something fast, if they want to be like to really see it, like what is
Like super take it in.
Yeah, but also I think Kalina has a question.
Oh, sorry, Kalina. This is so challenging.
Kind of like a comment. The most common favorite color is blue, which is a cool color. So it's kind of confusing that we perceive warmer colors, yet most people's favorite color is a cool color.
Maybe it's because it's like calming. That's kind of my theory is the reason people like blue is it's a calming color. It makes us feel more at ease. And that's like, there's literal science behind this. So psychology of color is actually a really big thing. Red has very specific connotations. We think of red as like passion, love, anger, intensity, right? Blues are more kind of like chill. They make us feel more mellow. You think of the sky, you think of the ocean. Those are calming things. So if you ever went to like a gym or something like that where they're trying to get you like pumped and excited, they're going to use like red, black, orange, yellow, like really intense, stark colors that try to like pump you up and amp you up. Whereas if you went to like a yoga studio, they might have like a pale green wall or a pale blue wall, and that's meant to make you feel at ease and calm. Yeah.
On there's a Guardians episode where they like there are two different teams and there's a rule every time they pump air and they would get like $10 or something, and they showed one team like all of this in bright colors, all this like stuff that would be pumped up, and they showed the other team, the blue team, like all calm colors and all calm stuff. And it was surprising the people who are on the red team would always blow it so high that they would pop the balloons.
Because they're too excited.
Yes, and the blue team they would always like get.
Yeah, because they're actually like taking a minute in between and actually like paying attention. Ollie, did you have a question?
I was gonna say that the color green kind of like says like energy.
Green, I feel like is one that could go either way because I think of like a green light and that means I get to drive essentially. So I feel like it is kind of energetic, and I would say it probably depends on the shade of green, right? If I'm thinking like a bright lime green, that's energetic.
Yeah.
But if I think of like a pale seafoamy green, that's definitely not energetic. That to me feels calm. And the thing is, I mean, the reality of the psychology of color is everyone perceives things differently. To one person, red might be like weirdly comforting. I don't know why. Probably something in their childhood made them feel that way because yay, psychology, they like to get into childhood. But reality is it's because it's what you know. That's why psychologists talk about that stuff is that's what you're familiar with and what you know. That's literally it. There we go. So we can only see colors that are longer than 400 nanometers or shorter than 700 nanometers. But other animals, like they said, can perceive more. So dogs can see into the ultraviolet range because they have less cones than us, but they can't see the difference between red and green. So dogs are technically colorblind when it comes to red and green. Yeah.
Is ultraviolet higher than 700 or is it lower?
Lower than 400. Yeah, so those are the really close together waves. So that's why, because it's measuring the space between the peaks. So they're really close together.
Could some animals see like gamma rays?
I mean, they explained that a little bit, but I got a little confused. That was the one part of the video.
Or X-rays, like that's ultraviolet, so it's more impact.
Yeah. So they were saying the mantis shrimp has 13 different cones. So they can perceive even more color than anything, which I think is hilarious because mantis shrimp are very cool. So I think that that's very exciting. Say that again. Yes. Let me write you a thing. Oh. Did I do everything correctly? Oh, I have to put the time in. Yep, you just hold on to it, and then if someone stops you, you have it. Okay. So let's go. There we go. That's okay. Uh-oh. Try refreshing.
I answered it.
Okay, so we're kind of gonna move into a little bit of a refresher. You guys already know this stuff. That's weird. I feel like this is acting weird. Okay. I feel like that slide was out of order. We'll figure it out. I feel as though that was a random one. Sorry, I may have screwed something up. Okay, so now we know how our eyes perceive color. We got super scientific. Now let's get artistic. You already know almost all of this. It is all a review.
I don't even know if I got it right.
How could you mess this up? You know this. That is a thing. Just leave it. It's okay.
Why is my image a cow? Oh my god.
Oh, so you can like harsh.
So remember, there are
I'm so
three.
smart.
There are three, and they are clearly not the three you just picked. Oh, that's so frustrating.
Oh no, that's it. That's not.
You don't know if that's you. There's multiple people. She's either the sloth. Oh, yeah, that's Delilah.
I got it right.
Wait. Is there only like one answer?
No, there's three different answers that it could be. I gave you guys alternatives, so if you didn't use the right word, it's okay.
I think I got it too. I said I hope I used the right word. And what image is that?
You're this one. I can't really tell what it
I
is.
think it's a turtle. upside down.
Mine's a water bucket.
Oh yeah, it is a turtle upside down.
Oh, it looks like this is why is there water bucket?
Mine looks like orange juice.
It looks like an angry something.
Who has the derpy dog?
That's Ella.
I'm so smart. I'm so smart. I could combine. No!
Woohoo! Okay. So to create the secondary colors, you must combine, mix, or blend two primary colors. If you got something close to that, I tried to get as many of them as I could think of.
What about have? You must have two.
In my mind, it's all about the mixing.
I think you might be the color. I think you might be the
You're fine.
I think you are. I put the right answer for you at first, but then. Why is he just like simple?
Okay, excellent.
Wait, what's this answer? What's this answer?
Look at it. Read it. It's right there.
Ask me for the answers. I don't know. What do you do? It's too far like turkey. I forgot, guys. This is second grade. Are they red and blue? I don't know. I can't tell you why. That's what I said. After asking you to do that 12 times.
Oh, it's violet.
How do we know if we got it right?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that that did that. It's red and blue. I guess so. I didn't realize it would do that.
No.
It's just orange.
I forgot about
Yep, you mix orange to make orange.
I answered right the first time, but then I didn't.
Oh, I actually picked the wrong answer.
I don't know. I just picked something. I remember this in science. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Oh, guys, I am getting more serious.
Okay, so tertiary. This is how you pronounce it. Tertiary. Tertiary. It's a very weird looking word, so I felt I needed to spell it out for you. So these are any colors that are a combination name. So like red, orange, blue, green, red, violet. Essentially, they're colors that fall in between the primary and the secondary colors. So tertiary is kind of like the third. I think about it that way. T, third. So we have primary, first, secondary, second. tertiary third. That's kind of how I process it in my mind. So those colors are combined, are made by combining the primary colors and the secondary colors.
Oh, I'm so smart. I don't know if I'm smart.
Huh? Cam's is skyrocketing right now.
I know. I have 600 shares.
Amazing.
I know.
So did Cam. I'm like, when are you gonna like pull back? Like, when's the moment? Yeah.
Today was at 40 cents.
He said Bitcoin dropped yesterday, which was weird. Yeah.
I know. I have 600. Yeah, 600.
Oh, I don't know this. I got it. Wait, what? What two? No, yeah. I did not get that right. I think it's six. I think it's something. Oh! Oh, I know why I'm not moving.
But I think answering slowly is more effective, personally.
Oh, I think that's why. Oh, I know why I'm really like behind.
Let's go.
You said that I was wrong. I asked the question, I answered the question wrong, and I didn't. I say that neighborhood, you have to see him first, like. What? I answered it so fast. I'm in 14. I'm in 4th now.
It's up on second on my thing though.
You would have a black. Like the whole tour.
It says mine. Why are you doing this?
Okay. I will wait.
What's it say?
Okay. So say I have a container of red paint and I just want to make it a smidge darker, just a little bit. If I add a whole bunch of black paint, I'm just going to turn it black. So I need to add a tiny bit at a time. So anytime you're trying to darken a color, you want to add like the smallest amount of black paint you possibly can, little bit at a time. Mix it up, try it on your paper, side paper, obviously not your final paper, and then see if it's the right amount, add a little more, test it, add a little more, test it. That is consistently the only way to do anything with paint. Most importantly with acrylic, you want to do thinner layers and lots of them. So it's going to take time to darken down sometimes. So if you know that it's going to need a couple more layers, you don't want to add more black potentially. You're just going to add more layers. So acrylic's very different than watercolor, completely different. But I want you guys to learn how to mix your colors this year because you're going to use this a lot next year in my class. Jordan.
Are we going to do like the science part today, or are we going to do a little bit?
You'll see. You're not going to get into painting today because no one is prepared with their painting garments, or some of you are, but not most of you. So I wanted to make sure that we didn't do that before you guys were ready. Not the first answer. Go with your first thought. Does it make no sense? I spent a really long time on this yesterday and I may have confused myself. So when should I add a small amount of black paint to a color to darken it?
It's just confirming the line. Every question.
Or it's maybe mine.
So read it carefully.
I think I got that wrong.
You have to read carefully. Yeah, but we're gonna wait. We're almost done, so I think we have one more question.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure.
That's okay.
I'm not sure.
I have no issue with that.
Oh, no, let's go. I knew it. Oh, yes, but it says I'm in second, so please.
Okay. So here's the deal. Thing with mixing colors is it's all about efficiency. So if I want to make an incredibly pale pink, as pale as it can possibly be, it's almost white. Would it make sense to just keep adding tons and tons of white paint into a big thing of red?
Yeah.
No, you're just wasting paint. Start with white and add a teensy bit of red.
That was really confusing.
Shouldn't be. It's very logical. Clearly it made enough sense. You probably are.
Yes,
I knew it.
Let's
go. I got it right.
Okay. So, paint colors have different powers. Click. There we go. So, pretty much all colors are stronger than yellow and will overpower yellow when you mix any color with it. So, if I wanted to make like a yellow green, I would start with yellow and then add a little bit of green rather than trying to add my yellow to my green. Because there's no point. I'm going to be mixing it for like 3 days and it's still going to barely look yellowy. Because the yellow simply doesn't have the power that the green has. The green's going to overpower it immediately. Yeah. I know. Okay, so black, red, and blue are all very powerful colors and will completely overpower any other color. So you want to mix those colors in small quantities and slowly. That makes a very, very big difference. Okay, so acrylic paint is not like watercolor at all. It works best when layers are painted on top of dry layers of paint. So if you try to just layer paint on top of wet paint, it's actually just going to keep picking it up on the paintbrush and it's not going to work. So you need to paint a coat, let it dry, and then paint another coat. Yeah. 1:05.
No, 5 minutes later.
Oh, no,
No, we're all gonna die.
Okay, I'll wait until I can talk again. Okay, so acrylic paint works best when you have a small amount of paint on your brush rather than globbing a bunch of paint on. Thinner, smaller amount works best. It will stain your clothes. It will stain your shoes. It'll stain your backpack. It'll stain your water bottle. It'll literally stain anything and everything. It is very powerful stuff. You never are required to mix water into acrylic paint. All that's going to do is thin it down and make it more transparent so you can see through it. So you never, ever mix water into your acrylic paint. You can mix paint into paint, but you never want to mix water in. It's not going to make it any better. Acrylic paint will 100% ruin brushes. So you want to make sure you're washing your brush super, super well. If acrylic paint dries on the brush, it's just going to stay like that forever. It'll never be that way. So you want to make sure you wash out your brushes super well. And I'm going to show you the Miss Layton's special technique for washing out brushes. I've taught this for the last 12 years and it works really, really well. I literally had a friend text me the other day and say that she washed out a brush that way from doing an egg wash on bread. And her husband was like, "Why did you do that?" Or her boyfriend. And she's like, "I don't know. That's how I learned in art class." So it sticks. It works. I promise. It's my method. I stand by it. So like I said before, it's plasticized. That means it dries into a plastic form. So it's really, really hard to deal with once it dries onto surfaces. Sometimes you can pick it off, but it's pretty challenging at times. Yeah.
How old is your youngest student that you have?
That I ever taught?
Yeah.
At 3 years old. I taught 3-year-olds.
Oh, no,
What do you mean?
how old are they now?
Oh, how old are my oldest
Yeah,
students?
yeah.
Oh gosh. I think Maya and Romy are 25 maybe. And I'm 32. So I taught them when I was not a whole lot older than them. It was weird, but it worked. I mean, technically, if we were really going to go there, when I was in art school, when I finished my credential, I actually had the opportunity to work at a place called Arts and Services for the Disabled. And everyone in the room was older than I was at that time. So they are all probably, yes, in their 50s, I would say. If not, some of them have potentially passed because they were quite a bit older. So yeah, actually probably my oldest student technically was quite a bit older, and I did work with them for about a month plus. So it was awesome. That was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Just goes to show that no matter what's going on, you can make art. I saw people who literally painted with their mouth, holding the paintbrush with their mouth. So you can definitely paint no matter what. Okay, so we had Miss Kalina in first place, kicking butt from home. So I'm all right, everybody. Stop talking. Stop talking. Por favor, please stop talking. All right. So for the next couple minutes, I want to demo a couple things about acrylic painting. And I'm just going to have you guys watch because obviously you're not prepared to be painting because you might wreck your clothes. So a couple things about acrylic paint is it comes in large quantities, very large quantities. Wow. I can't see it. So I'm going to show you guys a things about painting that you should know. Hopefully, I have the right paper somewhere. So I'm going to switch the camera to this camera. Okay, so you guys can all see. Why is it switching to that? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay, so with acrylic paint, you want to be always having water and paper towel. Super important. Those are the two things you always will need. And your best bet is to have some kind of tester paper because paint looks different when you mix it than it does once it's on the paper and once it dries. So it's super important that you have some different options. So let me, okay, so everyone can see the screen, yes? Okay, so if I start with just the plain teal color, and I paint it like this, I'm hoping I can zoom this in a little bit. Ooh, that's fun, you can barely see it. Okay, so you can kind of see the lines that it creates. So see how it's got a darker line there and a darker line on the edge? So what's happening there is the paint is blobbing as opposed to being flat. So anytime I use acrylic paint, it's my goal to not put down very much paint. And I usually dry my brush off.
It's very grainy. Yeah, it's like fuzzy.
Ah,
Looks like it's pixelated.
it is pixelated. There's only so much I can do. So basically, I want to brush it until it's pretty even. And I can't see any streaks in it. So you can see this color is pretty even as it is. I don't know if that's any clearer if I directed that over here. Slash, I don't really know that that tripod head can move very well. Give me 2 seconds. There we go. No. Is that better? Now you guys can see it a little more clearly. Okay, so I have one layer down here, so I'm going to let that dry. And I'm not going to try to paint on top of it because if I try to paint on top of it, I'm actually going to get a white spot in the middle where my paintbrush keeps pulling the paint up instead. So if I want to add a second layer onto that, I need to wait and do that in a minute. There we go. That's far less uncomfortable. So if I wanted to mix colors, and I wanted to start over here, if I wanted to make a super, super pale blue, creative endeavor, you guys, I apologize. To make that super pale color, like I was saying, if I wanted to make the palest blue I could make, I start with white and I add just the smallest amount of blue. So see how tiny this amount of blue is on my paintbrush? It's very small. So I'm going to start with that. And then I can see it's already starting to get a little bit of blue going. And I want to take my brush and like swipe off as much of the paint on the edges as I can. And then I'll add a little bit more. The reason you want to wipe your brush on the side of the bowl is it's kind of like with baking, how you always take a spatula and try to get everything off the spatula. It's kind of the same concept. So I want to use my brush, try to get as much off as I can, and I want to add it in small quantities. So if this is starting to feel like the right color, the thing I always do, as soon as it starts to feel like the right color, get all the excess off your brush, wash your brush, and then use it. Because otherwise there are unmixed particles of paint on my brush right now. So if I just went and painted with that, chances are I'd get a big streak of white through everything that was on my brush. So now I can use that paint more like it is.
It's like a baby blue.
So you guys can see there, see right here where there's like a streak. Oh wait, so you can see a couple little like blobby streaks of paint. The only way to get rid of those is to sort of brush them out. And I usually dry my brush off in between to kind of smooth everything down. So now I have one good layer of that, and I'm going to let it dry. If I wanted to do a darker version of this color, I want to add just the smallest amount of black that I can to start, and I don't want to go crazy with it. So if I add a bunch of black, I'm going to show you guys the right way and the wrong way, and you're going to see how it goes. Let me move that. It's going to be very obvious.
Still fun.
Is it? Okay, so I've got my blue paint in the palette. And then I'm going to start with, I'm trying to show you guys this and hope it focuses. You can see I have a really small amount of black paint on here. It's not very much. It might even be a little too much. So I might get a little off. And then I can mix it. Nope, didn't do anything. Need a tiny bit more. And you want to make sure you mix it really thoroughly before you make a decision to add more. So if I wanted to just darken this down a little bit so that it was like a deeper turquoise than this, that was effective, right? If I'd added much more black than that, it's just going to turn super dark blue, like immediately. So I'll show you guys just a little bit more black, not a whole lot more, and you'll see how quick it goes.
What happens to it if you add white after?
So if I add white to this, it's going to have a slight gray tone to it because black and white create gray. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be nice looking, honestly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can we like paint a stroke of that color next to the original?
That looks like
so we can like see the difference.
shiny. It looks like
Can you like
shiny.
so we can see the looks like a deep iron.
So it definitely makes a difference pretty quickly how much you add. So we'll see how much it takes to truly like turn this a dark, dark blue.
It looks almost like metallic.
Yeah. So it's all kind of about proportions. It's like if I add just a little bit of black, I don't make a big difference. If I add a lot of black or equal amount of black, it's just going to make a lot of it. So now, like you guys were curious, what happens? How much does that make? So you can see how dark that made that. Pretty significantly dark. Turn off that light. There we go. So now you guys are seeing closer to the right light for me. If I wanted to add a little bit of white to this and see what happens, because there's so much black in it, it's going to take a little more white to counteract that. It's all kind of like balancing. So now it's making kind of like a slate color.
That looks good though.
I love it. I love these kinds of colors.
I do too. I like the one where it's like purple gray. Can we
Yeah.
see it on like your palette?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the
anytime-
white is so good.
Here's the other thing to know about acrylic paint. So white, this white is literally called block out white, meaning it is meant to be very opaque. What's going on? What's happening in the back of the room? Clearly something's going on. Stop doing that. You're in the middle of class. You literally have all of lunch that you could do that. Just don't be rude and disrespectful. So white, if I mix with any other color, even if I just mix a tiny bit of it, it's going to make a big difference in terms of the opacity of the color. So transparency and opacity, super important terms for you to know. Sorry. The brush does not really want to get clean doing that, so it's just going to be slightly not clean.
Don't they mean the same thing though?
They don't. So transparency, I mean, yes, technically they do. Transparency is sort of the amount you can see through something, whereas opacity is kind of the amount you can't see through it, essentially. So if I draw like this line, so it's not related to tint and shade.
Well, like, I get it when you do a light or color.
Like it's alterable in the same way.
How tint is to shade.
Yeah. So if I take my plain paint and I paint over that line, you can still see it through pretty well, right?
Yeah.
If I take this same teal and I mix in a small amount of the white, not enough that it's going to really change the color, but just a little bit, it should cover that line a little bit better.
Because the white is like thick.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So you can still see it a little bit, but definitely not as much as the other side. It's more obvious on mine, I will say that. You can see it a little more clearly from what I can see. But it's definitely, you can see like, see how you can see all the marks of my brush a lot on this one, and you can't see them quite as intensely on that one? It's because that white is kind of blocking out those marks. Yeah.
How'd you do that thin of a line? Oh, you used
Sharpie pen. So now that I have, this is completely dry, I can show you guys if I add my second layer on, it pretty much blocks out all of those brush marks and makes it look nice and flat and clean. I can't see big blobs of color, right? So what I mean by big blobs of color, this is like the bane of my existence when it comes to teaching and painting. When people go like this and get like that much paint on their brush, and it just leaves like giant blobs on either side. It just doesn't look good, right? Like it looks like a 3-year-old painted it. My other least favorite thing with painting is seeing the brush marks. I don't want to see your brush marks. Unless that's your intention to see the brush marks, this should be flat. I shouldn't be able to see any brush marks. So the depth that you can get with paint is a lot, but that's more common in oil painting, not in acrylic painting. So sometimes you might see a painting that's got like big globs of paint on it and you can really see every brush mark. That's oil painting specific. That tends to be more that way. Acrylic is meant to be pretty flat. That's kind of the look you get in our.
What if you do that thing with the like glob on each side and then you like spread it out to like paint a one surface?
You can definitely do that. It sometimes does leave marks. So that would be my advice, is just always have less paint on your brush than you think you need. Elias, did you have a question?
My mom had paintings, but I think if
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously plenty of artists do that by choice, like for the aesthetic of the painting that they're trying to create. For the project we're gonna do is, I guess I didn't put it up here. I thought I did. It's the color wheel that's up on the front board. So you can see we're gonna just be painting a flat piece of paper and then you're gonna cut it out. So you don't have to worry about learning how to paint within lines for this particular project at first. Then you are gonna paint in between lines doing your value scale. So you're gonna get a little bit of both experience. Like if I paint on a paper and then cut it out, I don't really have to worry so much about, I'm not painting within a circle, right? It's a lot easier. And then you'll do the value scale kind of once you get the hang of painting. So you'll see what difference that makes. Yeah.
My mom made this painting, and it had like little it was a picture of a famous person. I don't know who it is, but it was it was made out of a ton of little dots of like acrylic paint, I think. And it was like you could feel it, and it was like pointy.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
So there's a couple things going on there. One, pointillism. So pointillism is a specific field of art in which they did small dots, and once you look at all those dots from far away, you perceive an image. If you got really close to it, it just looked like dots, right? If it has a little point to it, that's because when they dotted the paint down, like when I've done that, I use the end of a paintbrush. And when I dot it down, when I pull my paintbrush back up, it kind of like slurps it up and leaves a little point on the top. So that's usually why that would happen. Some artists use different tools, like especially in ceramics, that happens a lot. So if I wanted to do dots, I would actually use a tool that's like a little squeeze bottle with a tiny metal tip on it, and then I can kind of control what I'm doing more specifically. Did you have a question?
No.
Thinking? So what else do I want to show you? I want to show you another coat of the lighter paint. So you can still see, I have to move this, I'm sorry. You can still see how streaky this super pale paint is. So if I add a little bit, remember I'm not putting a ton of paint on my brush. It's not like a giant glob of paint. And if I add my second coat on here, again, it's wiping out all those brush marks. And it looks really clean now. Very like flat and nice, and it looks professional. So the biggest advice I have for acrylic is tons of layers, let them dry in between. If you don't let it dry in between, your brush is literally just gonna keep picking up the paint. So I'll see if I can show you guys how to do that. You're gonna hold your paintbrush the same way you hold a pencil. I don't usually quite get my fingertips onto the metal part because that's not comfortable for me in terms of holding it, but you're gonna just have to try it out and see what feels comfy to you. Some artists, you see people who will like hold really far back on the paintbrush. They're not generally trying to achieve precision. It might be more gestural, like the way they move their arm is what's creating the mark. Whereas if I'm painting something really tiny and I really want to get little details, I choke up a lot on the paintbrush and I'm pretty close to the end of it. So it's just different ways to create art. I know a lot of times I feel like there's this trope of the artist being like, oh, like I'm just flancily applying paint to a canvas like you're some loony or something. Like most people don't do that. That doesn't really happen. So I don't know. You're gonna hold the brush the same way you normally hold it. Same thing as watercolor. So what else do I want to show you about acrylic? If I was trying to paint inside of a shape, so say I'm gonna fling a Sharpie, that's what I'm gonna do. If I wanted to paint, I don't know, inside a circle, this is like the most boring thing ever. General circle shape, and I wanted to paint this in. I have a couple ways I do it. Normally I put down a little bit of the paint in the center, And then I'm gonna push the paint out to the edge. And I'm going super, super slow to try to meet the edge of this.
I would like make a mistake. How do you do that?
Because I'm not rushing.
My hand's always shaky when I do something like that.
I'm trying very hard not to let my hand shake. I also have fairly steady hands. But part of it too is you guys can't really see this. Why is it doing that? I have my hand resting on the table. If I was trying to paint this and I didn't have my hand resting on the table, I'd be screwed. If I tried to do this, I don't even want to try because it's going to be so hard. But if I have my elbow sticking out, close this so you guys can see. If I have my elbow sticking out, I have no stability. I'm going to try to bring this down as far as I can. Sorry, Kalina. So if I have my elbow out and I don't have my hand resting on the table, Ella, stop texting, or whatever it is you're doing, I don't know that I can quite get the precision. That helps. To get inside the line quite as well, because I feel like I'm free floating if I'm doing this. So when I'm painting, my hand is down. If I can't have my hand down, I have my elbow tucked into my body like this. So when I do wheel throwing, I am not buff by any means, but wheel throwing is very like upper body heavy. The trick to everything in wheel throwing is just tucking your arms into your body as tight as you can so that this is stable. This is not stable. This is stable. So everything with art, I tend to either be tucking or resting my hand. If I can't rest my hand in a certain spot, I'll literally support my arm with my other arm or a bottle or anything. I can't do it with my arm just like floating. That doesn't work for me. So to try to paint within the lines, I usually do more than one thing. Oop, that kind of went outside of it, but it's pretty close. And again, I just don't have very much paint on my brush. And I'm trying to keep even pressure on my brush. So if I was painting a line, right, and I keep the same pressure, it's pretty close, right? It's still pretty line-like. If I take this time and I press super lightly, and then I start to press hard, and then light again, and then hard, you can see the shape changed because I put different pressure on it. So that's like the calligraphy thing, right? Is to go light to heavy. So when I'm painting something like a line, I want to make sure I'm not moving my hand up and down. I'm keeping consistent pressure. Otherwise, what's going to happen is I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this again, and then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have weird blobby lines. What happened here at the very beginning of this line was that I had too much paint on my brush, and it blobbed out on the sides. So when I get paint on my brush, I kind of like dip and turn the brush so it's consistently getting paint on all sides. And that way, when I start a line, it doesn't all gloop out at the top like that. Trying to think if there's anything else. I do this a lot, so a lot of it's very intuitive to me. So I feel like I have to like really explain what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm not going to say anything and you're all going to be like, so how'd you do that? Because that's how my brain works with this, because I've done this for a very long time. In terms of other types of shapes, trying to think like, if I wanted to say paint in like a star shape, it's gonna be the worst star ever. I hate drawing stars. So you guys still have 5 minutes. Thank you.
When are vignettes due?
The vignettes are due next Friday. You just won't have any more time to work on them in class.
Like this Friday or the Friday after?
This coming Friday, but you guys have to work on them at home.
And then how do we know what people are grades for?
They all should be on Canvas.
Are we able to look right now?
Yeah, go for it. And you guys, I'm leaving you comments on your vignette rubric, so make sure you turn in your vignette rubric. I'm leaving you comments on there in terms of like suggestions or things I think you did well.
You're supposed to turn the rubric after the vignette, though.
Yes. So if I were trying to paint something that had points like this, I don't have a lot of paint on the very end of my brush. It's kind of consistently on the brush. And I'm going to use the very, very end of the brush to try to get in those pointy spots. And honestly, a lot of this comes down to practice. I want to give you guys time tomorrow to literally just feel what it feels like to paint with this kind of paint because it's totally different. And I want you guys to test these different things. How do I mix a tint? How do I mix a shade? How many layers does it take? How do I fill in a shape? And seriously, like the only way you're gonna get any better at art is by practicing it, A, and B, taking it seriously. So if every time you do it, you're just like, whoa, like I'm screwing it all up. No, you're screwing it up on purpose. You're choosing to screw it up. So actually take it seriously, slow down, breathe. Don't be talking while you're doing it. It's really hard. Obviously, I've been doing this for a very long time. I can. If I were a student right now, I probably wouldn't be having a conversation and trying to paint at the same time. It's too hard. So those are days where like putting your music in, definitely the way to go. So we're doing this, Kalina. So you're gonna need a couple pieces of that Bristol paper to do it. And I have to switch you. Sorry, you're probably backwards, seeing this backwards. There we go. So you guys are gonna learn how to mix all of the colors on the color wheel.
Are we gonna make that?
You're gonna learn how to make the tints of each of those colors. The only reason I'm not having you make the shades of each of those colors is a lot of these colors turn out looking very weird when you try to mix them darker, like darker yellow just turns green. So you can see up top, see how my outer layer, a lot of it's just like black or brown looking. That's why I'm not having you guys do the shades of these. But I am gonna have you do a value scale going light and a value scale going dark. Okay? So we're gonna set this up tomorrow, get it all prepped and ready to go. We're also going to do some painting exercises like what I just did, where I kind of showed you guys a couple different ways to do things. So please, don't wear your favorite clothes tomorrow. Don't wear your favorite shoes tomorrow. Do not bring your most precious backpack, stuffy, anything. If you have anything that you'd like, you don't want to bring it in this room. Okay? It gets on your hands and it gets on everything. Do you have a question, Jordan? Come up here and ask. It's hard to hear you. Bye, Kalina. See you tomorrow.